There's a moment that happens after survival stops being the center of your life. At first, it feels like relief. You're no longer in crisis, no longer reacting to every impact, but eventually another feeling shows up alongside that relief: uncertainty. Because when survival is no longer the goal, the question becomes, what do I do with my life now? And a lot of people assume purpose should arrive with a clear answer. In reality, it usually shows up in a very simple way: through curiosity, experimentation, and the willingness to try things before you know exactly where they'll lead. Hi there, I'm LaVeck, a double widower who's trying to help others navigate the world of loss and renewed purpose at life after losses. Today I want to talk about that moment when choosing what to explore next may be the most practical way to discover what comes next. Over the past several weeks, we've been exploring what happens after survival stops being the center of life. We talked about the identity that forms when you're known as the strong one. We talked about outgrowing roles that once made sense. We've talked about the language of survival and how easy it is to keep speaking it long after it's been stabilized. We've talked about desire returning and about purpose that begins in pain but eventually grows beyond it. All of those reflections lead to a very practical question: now what? For many people, this is where things get surprisingly difficult. When survival is the goal, life is simple for one sense. You focus on getting through the day. When stability returns, the rules change. The responsibility of choosing what comes next returns as well, and choosing can feel intimidating. Part of the challenge is that many of us assume purpose should arrive like a lightning bolt. We imagine there's you'll be a clear calling, a moment of certainty, a perfectly formed plan that suddenly makes everything obvious. In reality, purpose rarely works that way. More often, it emerges through experimentation. You try something, you learn something about yourself, you adjust, you try something else. And over time, those experiences begin to reveal patterns. What energizes you, what drains you, what feels meaningful, and what simply doesn't fit. Looking back at my own path, that process is easy to see. After my husband died, I stepped into work that mattered to him. I volunteered, I ran for school committee, I stayed active in the community because those causes reflected the life we had shared. That chapter in my life mattered, and it taught me a great deal. It also helped me discover something important. Honoring someone else's purpose is not the same thing as discovering your own. The things that eventually felt most aligned to me, writing, sharing my story, coaching, acting again, didn't come to me all at once. They gradually presented themselves as I followed my curiosity and paid attention to what felt meaningful. Some things fit, some things didn't. Some people fit, some didn't. And that's part of the process. If you're wondering what comes next in your own life, the answer may not come from thinking harder about it. It may come from the simple act of trying something. Take a class, volunteer somewhere new, start a project you've been curious about, revisit something you once loved but set aside, say yes to an opportunity that feels slightly outside your usual routine. Not everything you try will turn into purpose. That's not the goal. The goal is discovery. Each experience gives you information about yourself. It shows you what resonates and what doesn't. Over time, those signals begin to point you toward things that feel authentic. Purpose isn't something we always find at once. Sometimes we build it piece by piece. It also helps to remember that purpose doesn't have to be grand or public to be meaningful. It doesn't have to become a career or a mission statement. Sometimes purpose simply means engaging with life in ways that feel aligned with who you are becoming. The important thing is movement. Curiosity instead of hesitation, exploration instead of overthinking, asking what if instead of waiting for certainty. Now, if there's one lesson I've learned through all of this, it's the purpose is less about finding the perfect path and more about paying attention to where your energy naturally flows. The things that make you feel more alive, the things that spark your curiosity, the things that make you want to keep showing up. Those are usually the clues. So if you're standing at that moment where survival is no longer the goal and you're wondering what to do next, consider this your permission to experiment. Try things. Let some of them go. Keep the ones that feel right. Purpose tends to reveal itself to people who are willing to participate in their own lives. And that brings us to this week's reflection. And instead of asking yourself the overwhelming question, what is my purpose? Try asking something smaller and more actionable. What am I willing to explore next? It doesn't have to be forever. It doesn't have to be your final answer. It just needs to be the next step. Maybe it's something you've been curious about but haven't tried yet. Maybe it's something you once loved and quietly set aside. Maybe it's simply saying yes to something that feels slightly outside your routine. You don't have to know where it leads. Exploration is how purpose reveals itself. So this week, instead of searching for the perfect answer, ask yourself one simple question. What am I willing to explore next? That may be the best place to start. Thanks for watching.